Hi, we're Sarah and Patricia, and we're going to talk to you about how to get your learners motivated. In this video, we're going to cover three popular theories of motivation, including expectancy value theory, causal attribution theory, and goal orientation theory.
Motivation is essential in so many areas of life, and its impact is broad. Whether we are looking at the classroom, the home, or a leadership setting, motivation plays a major role in shaping behavior, effort, and overall outcomes. In the classroom, motivated students tend to be more engaged in learning and are often more successful academically. At home, motivation can help create a supportive environment where family members feel encouraged and capable of growing. In leadership settings, motivation helps move teams toward shared goals and can increase both productivity and commitment. There are several ways motivation can be supported and strengthened. One of the most important is feedback. Constructive feedback helps people recognize their progress while also identifying areas where they can improve. Setting clear, realistic goals is also important because it gives people direction and something meaningful to work toward. In addition, tasks should be designed to be challenging enough to keep people interested, but still realistic enough that success feels possible. Relationships also matter. When people feel supported, valued, and encouraged, they're more likely to stay motivated. Finally, creating opportunities for success can make a big difference. Experiencing success helps build confidence, which in turn can strengthen motivation and encourage continued effort.
The first theory that I'm going to cover is the expectancy value theory. This theory combines two major ideas. First is of expectancy. It's essentially the belief in yourself. It's the belief that you can succeed at a task. Second is value. It's the belief that the task matters or is worth doing. This is important because motivation is strongest in an individual when they believe they can succeed and have a meaningful reason to engage with the task. For instance, there may be a learner capable of completing a task, but if they see no value in it or feel the cost is too high, they may still disengage. To continue, expectancy is essentially how a person envisions or expects themselves to perform on a task. One's expectancy can be positive or negative. For instance, if a person generally excels in science classes, they may retain a positive expectancy when registering for a chemistry course. Their previous success in science courses resulted in a high self efficacy, or the belief in yourself to accomplish a task, though it's important to note that self efficacy can fluctuate from task to task. That same student with a positive expectancy and high self efficacy in science can also have a negative expectancy and low self efficacy in social studies. When it comes to value, value can be broken down into four major parts: intrinsic interest value, which is how much enjoyment someone anticipates getting from a task; attainment value, which evaluates how important a task is to someone's identity; utility value, which relates to how useful a task is to one's goals; and cost, which is simply how much effort, emotion, or even time is required for a task. One real life application of this theory was with my spouse who felt that he was smart but bad at school. While he expected to do well in school because of his intelligence, there were issues with his value. His utility value was positive, meaning he understood the importance of earning a degree. He also loves learning, especially about the subject that his degree was in, hence, he had a positive attainment value as well. Ultimately, though, in his mind, the cost of school was far too great, and not just in a monetary sense. He felt that when he had to spend time completing homework, it took away time from him doing things that he loved, like spending time with myself or our friends. Schoolwork was also just not something he anticipated having fun doing, suggesting he had a negative intrinsic value. To motivate him, I began by trying to reduce the cost in his mind. I stressed the importance of planner apps to organize when work could get done as to not conflict with other, more enjoyable tasks. I also suggested that we plan study dates so that even during times of work, quality time was still being spent together. Finally, I encouraged a growth mindset to rid him of the idea that he was bad at school and can learn this skill and improve upon it like any other skill. I spent time emphasizing the likelihood of success in his next attempt at school as well to help build that self efficacy. As a result, he has since applied to return back to school and been accepted. There's been a shift in his attitude towards school as well. He's seemingly returning with more confidence in himself and less concern about the negative costs. Overall, This instance really taught me the importance of discerning the true issues regarding someone's motivation because it can help target specific solutions to help intervene before it becomes too late.
Causal attribution theory focuses on how people explain the reasons behind their successes and failures, and those explanations can have a major impact on motivation. In other words, the way someone interprets failure often shapes what they do next. If a person believes failure happened because of a lack of ability, motivation is more likely to drop. But if that same failure is attributed to using the wrong strategy, motivation is more likely to stay intact because the person sees a path forward. This theory helps explain those reactions by looking at whether a person sees the cause as internal or external, stable or unstable, and controllable or uncontrollable. Those beliefs can strongly influence confidence, effort, and the willingness to keep trying. The first dimension of causal attribution theory distinguishes between internal and external attribution, indicating whether a person attributes an outcome to internal factors like effort, ability, or study habits, or to external factors like luck, task difficulty, or the environment. The second dimension of attribution is stable versus unstable, determining whether a person views the cause of an outcome as constant or variable. Seeing failure as stable and unchanging may lead to a belief in repeated negative outcomes, while viewing it as unstable encourages hope for improvement, which enhances motivation. The third dimension of attribution explores controllable versus uncontrollable outcomes. When individuals perceive a cause as controllable, they feel capable of making changes and improving. Viewing it as uncontrollable can lead to feeling discouraged. When I applied causal attribution theory, I focused on a child's struggle with math and the way those struggles were affecting her motivation. Over time, she had started to believe that her difficulty in math was due to low ability rather than something she could improve. That belief was a negative factor because, according to attribution theory, students are more likely to lose motivation when they view failure as something internal, stable, and uncontrollable. In this child's case, she had begun to see math struggles as proof that she was just not good at math, which caused her confidence to drop and made her more likely to avoid challenging work. As I reflected on her reactions, I realized that simply helping her complete homework or giving reassurance was not enough to change the way she was interpreting failure. I needed to understand the attribution behind her frustration. Through conversations with her, it became clear that she was attributing her struggles to low ability rather than to factors like strategy use, confidence, or persistence. That realization helped guide the motivational approach I chose to use. Once I recognized that this child was viewing her struggles through an uncontrollable lens, I focused on attributional retraining. Instead of letting math mistakes reinforce the idea that she lacked ability, I intentionally redirected our focus toward effort, strategy, and growth. I gave her math problems I knew she could complete successfully so she could begin rebuilding confidence. When she encountered more difficult multi step problems, I modeled strategies, praised her persistence through each step, and celebrated small successes along the way. I also worked to reframe the language she used. If she said, I can't do this, I would help her shift that thinking towards something more productive, like breaking the problem into smaller steps and trying a strategy. Over time, I noticed a change in her willingness to engage with difficult problems. She became less frustrated, she was more willing to try things independently, and she was more confident when she experienced success. This experience showed me that causal attribution theory can be a powerful framework for motivation because it helps identify how a learner is interpreting failure and then guides us towards supports that shift motivation in a more positive direction. Up next is goal orientation theory, which focuses on the reasons people engage in learning or challenging tasks and the kinds of goals they set for themselves in the process. In general, the theory looks at whether a person is motivated by mastering a skill, improving over time, and learning from mistakes, or whether they're more focused on performance outcomes, such as proving success or avoiding failure. These goal orientations matter because they shape how a person responds to setbacks, challenges, and progress. In a motivational setting, understanding someone's goal orientation can help us support persistence, confidence, and long term growth rather than just short term results.
One scenario in which I applied this theory in the real world was with one of my family members. She had stated for a while that she had a goal of losing 20 pounds, but to no avail. After some probing, I realized that her goal had a few issues. It was distal, meaning the end goal was very far off. It also lacked specific details of how to achieve the goal, and there was no way for her to track her progress with the goal. The most important issue was that she was not aiming to lose weight and change her appearance for herself, but rather so that she would appear a certain way to others. This performance oriented mindset is unhealthy and can lead a person to feelings of helplessness and a loss of motivation, which it ultimately did in this instance. There were a few interventions that I put in place to help her meet her goals. First, instead of one surmounting task, we created smaller, proximal, meaning short term, goals that were actionable with clear guidelines of what was required of her, how long she would be doing things like exercising, and we ensured that all of it was bound by a realistic timeline. We incorporated a way to track how she was meeting her goal using an app on her phone called Habit, because there was a study that found that individuals who self managed when tracking their goals were more successful at attaining them and following through. I also made sure to praise her efforts for exercising and keeping up with the goal, as this helps to instill more internal motivation like that in a mastery oriented individual. As a result, she's already reported weight loss, has shown consistently in tracking her goals in 5 out of 6 instances, and has an overall more positive outlook on her weight loss journey.
When I applied goal orientation theory to my spouse's health journey, I realized that his motivation had been centered on performance goals, like reaching a specific number on the scale. He had started exercise and nutrition plans with a strong desire to lose weight, but that goal often became the sole measure of success. When progress slowed, it was discouraging for him. Instead of recognizing growth and consistency, healthier habits, or better choices, his focus stayed on the outcome of weight loss, which made it easier for frustration to set in and harder to stay motivated over time. As I reflected on his previous experiences, I saw that one of the biggest issues was not a lack of desire, but the type of goal orientation driving his effort. Goal orientation theory helped me recognize that he needed more support in shifting toward mastery oriented goals, where success could be measured by learning healthier habits and building consistency. To support him, I intentionally applied acts of motivation that emphasized mastery, growth, and consistency over performance alone. Instead of focusing conversations on pounds lost, I worked to highlight process based goals, such as completing workouts, making healthier food choices, or staying consistent with exercise. I also made a point to celebrate smaller signs of progress, like having more energy or sticking with the plan after a difficult day. My goal was to help him see that success was not only tied to a final outcome, but also to the habits and persistence that lead to long term change. Shifting toward mastery focused motivation helped me realize how important it is to shape motivation around growth, strategies, and progress rather than only around an end result. It also reminded me that the same idea applies in my classroom, where students are often more motivated when they can recognize their growth and effort instead of feeling defined by a single performance outcome. Looking back to review all three theories, one of the biggest takeaways is that motivation is shaped by the way people think about their abilities, their goals, and their experiences with successes or failures. Whether the challenge was building confidence, reframing failure, or shifting the focus from performance to growth, each theory offered a different lens for understanding motivation. Together, they showed us that meaningful motivation often comes from helping someone feel capable, supported, and focused on progress, which is something we will continue carrying into our personal lives and into our classrooms. As teachers, we can start to use this information to connect tasks to student interests, scaffold learning to increase a student's expectancy of success. Our feedback can emphasize growth and strategies, and we can really focus on creating mastery oriented classrooms.
Parents and leaders can help too. You can start by praising children for their persistence during difficult tasks and problem solving through issues instead of just stopping. Additionally, by changing the way children interpret setbacks, you can help them view challenges as something interesting to try rather than an obstacle too large for them to attempt. Also, it can be important for them to see their goals as stepping stones toward a bigger long term outcome. By clarifying the purpose and relevance of the smaller tasks, It can help them understand why the larger task matters.
There are a couple of things to remember when thinking about motivation. The motivation problems are often more complex than simply not trying, and small changes in feedback, goal design, and task framing can shift motivation significantly.
All in all, motivation matters. When we understand why someone struggles with motivation, we can choose strategies that help them grow and succeed. Thank you for watching our video today, and we look forward to seeing how you all motivate the people in your life.